Okay, we'll start again. I'll call to order the Lenox Public Schools School Committee meeting of November 16, 2021. In public comment and identify.
Yeah, so we're all there's people at home who may be turning in.
Oh,
Okay, you know, they can.
if you come up and speak closer to one of our computers, then should be able to. We can even turn it around, John, so that you can be seen.
If you want to speak right next to the computer there.
All right, sorry about I'm John Barry. I think some of you know me. I have 3 daughters who went to the Lenox school system. Our love launched doing well. I also served at one point on the finance committee. So I am concerned with the budget. I'll probably be listening in on the whole process. But tonight it's something a little bit different. I'll try to be brief with this. I know you guys all have a lot of work to do. My comments take about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, something like that. Let me just dive into it. So I'm here to encourage discussion and transparency. There are parents and residents I can't speak for. Someone may be tuning in via Zoom, but I know they feel similarly and they couldn't attend tonight in person. Specifically, what I'm interested in is that I'm encouraging the schools to be very transparent in a proactive way with regard to what is meant specifically by diversity, equity, and inclusion, and social and emotional learning, and how these concepts are being integrated into the curriculum and instruction, professional development, and access to facilities in educational material. I understand that the nature of education evolves, and that's as it should be. But these topics are a considerable expansion, in my view, of traditional education. So parents and taxpayers, I think, should be fully informed regarding whatever changes are going to take place. Now, admittedly, I've only recently turned my attention to it. So maybe all of this has been explicitly defined and discussed and made available to the public. If so, that's great. Please let me know, but I'm unaware of it. I realize that part of the agenda tonight addresses those topics, which is good, but I'm guessing it's not intended to be comprehensive, detailed discussion. I have read the 5-year strategic plan, and I realize it was based in part on input from a comprehensive survey, and I think I may have even participated in that. It was a couple of years ago. And while I found numerous mentions of the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I found the plan to be general rather than specific. In reviewing the survey results, I didn't see evidence that respondents were particularly concerned that those concepts be adopted or implemented. I want to be very clear. I'm sure nothing is being held back. I'm just suggesting making this information available online, maybe through a public forum. And I looked at the school committee to consider how that might be accomplished if you think my point has merit. And basically, some forum to discuss the efforts and answer questions from parents and taxpayers. I'm interested in this to avoid the conflicts and mayhem that has occurred elsewhere. Because in those cases, I think parents were surprised to learn about those efforts, but only after they were underway. So those are my comments, and I appreciate the opportunity to let you know.
October 25th. Are there any comments and suggestions? Hearing none, call for vote. All in favor? Okay, Ron, thank you. Let's stop here.
The first I'm going to do a sort of new, but I'm sort of following.
And my first time going to the MASC, for those who don't know, the MASC Association of School Committees, of which we are a member, and the MASC Association of Superintendents are two organizations that provide continuing education, support, consulting, etc., to help school districts to manage and receive input. And 10 years ago, I went to a conference. Cool about that, but I felt the conference was very thick with a lot of training about regulation and things that we can find very easily on the internet, and it was not very fulfilling as I found that this particular conference. I think as our school committee, people have chosen how much they want to get involved in MASC. We use the consulting work from MASC to help us with training, sometimes with hiring searches, they assisted us with finding different software. And I think that they're a pretty great organization. We in the Berkshires, for those who don't know, are part of Division 6. Our interim superintendent, Bill Cameron, is our Division 6 rep, and our will occasionally throughout this year be meetings. During COVID, I think those meetings didn't really happen, but hopefully we will re-engage and seeing how we can have communication about the school districts in Berkshire County, Division 6. And then we each have had opportunities for training through MASC. Any new members get their kind of our onboarding training at the beginning, learning the course. So this was our annual conference, and as I said, it's superintendents and school committee members, as well as members of representatives from DESC, including Commissioner Brown. So it was actually a really wonderful program. I was there for Wednesday through Friday, and I felt there was a lot of rich professional development and engagement for us as members and superintendents to engage together. And some examples of some of what we talked about were efforts to do training in diversity, equity, and inclusion, which there is a lot of progress and work throughout the state in trying to think about our academics and what we learn, be more inclusive of multiple perspectives and multiple stories. In the history of this nation, over 400 years, and not only from one perspective, so that there was quite a few people talking about not so much curriculum specifically, because that's often developed at the district level. I'm talking about training in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what that often means is finding ways to hear multiple voices and perspectives in schools. All students in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts are entitled to an appropriate, free and fair and appropriate education, and so being able to look and have some specificity of all members and residents of our state is very important, and it's one of the hallmarks of the importance of DESC as well. Doing several trainings, and we learned about some consulting work, some organizations that we again have engaged with in the past, like the Consulting for Education Services, which is a collaborative that can help give us services if we need training or if we need any outside groups to come in and help us. And I found it to be really rich and an opportunity to engage with a lot of leaders from across the state. A couple of the seminars I attended that were good were also about collaborative relationships with superintendents. There was some transparency and budgeting, which were really important. And there were some discussions providing a lot of support actually for school committees who have had some increase of animosity and lack of stability in meetings. And I just really felt when I didn't go to one of those because I felt like here we are in Berkshire County, and we've had a history of really strong modeling, strong stability, strong engagement, even amongst people who disagree, and even amongst issues last year with COVID. And I used a minute to actually go a little further and say that I think that if we continue to talk about budgeting, curriculum, and engaging in our negotiations for the details about that with our education associations, it's really, really important that we talk a lot in the school committee and school leadership about words matter. I think it's really important we're engaging in these conversations that we conduct ourselves in a way with respect and some sense that we're all here trying to make this a great community and a great school for our kids. And that doesn't mean we can't disagree with it. We can find a way to model for our young people and for each other. Great, of course. And having said that, I know we're going into the agenda of a number of items. We have some upcoming finance meetings and negotiations. And I think it's really, really important that I hope that we hold our other leaders referring to each other in ways that are uplifting as opposed to pejorative. And I'm concerned about some reasons. into that. And so hopefully we're going to move forward with good, robust discussions. I think that we have as a district model transparency and openness. And I think we'll continue to do that. And I hope that we're all going to conduct ourselves in that way. And I think these opportunities to connect with other school districts state of regions. So one thing I thought was really cool is they did have the MASC members of the MASC Nation tribe from Cape, because we were in the Cape. They came and gave a presentation at breakfast of the history of the MASC Nation. And I really enjoyed that a lot. And then we had another day that was student perspective. And they came in, and students actually documented. We have an organization 351, which is the leadership organization under for students across the state and eighth grade. And they did a video production of the students' experiences of what it was like to go through COVID. And it was really well done. And I think it is available on the MASC website. And students presented about what it was like to be in their schools and how their students wanted to engage in leadership. And they were quite meaningful to one of the students about a journey with mental health. There's a lot of opportunities to hear from different people and a lot of opportunities to think about leadership and making those tools in a way that. So thank you for letting me know. Hopefully someone can talk about
highlights and recognitions. It's been very busy. Across better here. It's been a very busy fall at both schools. So we'll start with some of the recaps since our last meeting at LMHS. Fall sports have wrapped up and they've enjoyed tremendous success. Virtually every team.
One second, Mark. We have some people who are saying, would it be possible for the speakers? Because the sound at home is not evidently not good.
All right. Virtually every team made it to the postseason. Our volleyball team was amazing. They traveled 10 hours round trip twice in the same week. One opportunity that was to play in a play-in match for the state tournament, and once more to play Hopedale, who was the number one seed in the tournament. Unfortunately, we didn't prevail against Hopedale, but the girls did put in a strong performance. The golf team won the Western Mass Championship, and then they played in the state tournament, placing fourth in the state. So congratulations to the golf team. Boys soccer team made the tournament and lost in overtime in a heartbreaker of a game. It was a double overtime game. It was really exciting. Our team played very well and I think dominated the game in terms of possession time. And
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
In terms of possession time and field position, but unfortunately, we did lose in overtime on a free kick to St. Joseph's Prep from Boston. The girls soccer team opened with a win in the first round of the state tournament, 4-0 over Hopkins, and then they were eliminated in the second round by a very strong West Boylston team. And our cross-country team will compete in the state tournament this Saturday in Rentham. So tremendous to see so many teams go so deep into postseason play. And so the state tournament, just in case you're unaware, comes after winning your conference and sectionals and divisional type championships. So to make it to the states is a pretty significant accomplishment. So kudos to our athletes. Great job with our athletic director, Dave Pugh, supporting our teams and making sure that we had the opportunity to do as well as we did. So we're very proud. Just this past weekend, our students put on a tremendous performance of Shakespeare's Cymbeline as part of the Fall Festival of Shakespeare, held in our Duffin Theater with performances on Friday and Saturday night. I had the opportunity to attend the Friday night performance, and I think they did a great job. I was particularly struck in how much these students are able to do working with Shakespeare and Company to put together a Shakespearean play in such a short period of time. I mean, they've only had a few months to really work on this whole thing. So between learning the lines, working on the set design, the lighting, the technology for the play, It was really tremendous. So again, great job. And we had great crowd who was very into the play as well. So thank you to those students and to Shakespeare and Company for another strong performance for the Fall Shakespeare Festival. The LMMHS also engaged their school community in a canned food drive, and they collected over 300 donations to benefit the Lenox Food Pantry. So they were quite pleased with the turnout this year and the participation in their canned food drive. And then this week is a really exciting week over at the high school because it's Spirit Week. And so they have theme days each day of the week where students may dress in different themed attire. And today was Twin Day. And then they also have a volleyball tournament that kind of runs throughout the week. And so in the first round of the tournament, they had over 75 students participate, and they play in their tournament. And then the winning student team will take on a faculty team this Friday afternoon at a pep rally. So it's a really exciting week for students at the high school. And one of the things I'm particularly excited about this week at the high school is that we're having our first, maybe ever, maybe not ever, but as far as I'm talking to folks, no one can remember one, first homecoming dance this Saturday night. It'll be held at the community center from 7:30 to 9:30. And what makes this particularly important to me is the fact that this was a student-driven event. The students were the ones who asked the administration to put on this dance. They put together a proposal. They planned the logistics of it. And so to me, it's really wonderful to hear student agency and student voice be valued in the schools and trying to really give wings to the dreams of the kids for some of the programs and activities that they want to see. So the first homecoming dance will be this Saturday night. So I hope the kids have a wonderful time. I know that we're excited for it. Morris had a wonderful week as well. The last couple of weeks, they had a wave parade for Veterans Day where all the classrooms went outside and they lined up along their driveway, and then folks came in and drove through, and the students waved to them and shared the artwork that they made. So every class had an art project that they participated in. So there's a variety of student art that was on display as well. There's some great pictures of the event on our social media pages, so you can certainly check those out if you'd like to see a few more images from the day. Also, a big thanks to the Lenox Police and Lenox Fire Departments who pitched in to help out. They brought a ladder truck over to the school, and the kids were really excited to see that as it hoisted the American flag in the parking lot. And also the Lenox Police helped lead the parade and make sure that our students were safe. In related news, Morris will be holding a pediatric vaccine clinic on November 30th at 3:15. That clinic is being put on throughout the county at different locations. And they reached out and asked if we'd be interested. And we said that we would certainly love to serve as a host site. So again, that'll be on November the 30th at 3:15 when school lets out. And that'll run for 2 hours. Everyone's is invited to attend, even if they don't attend Morris School. However, they do ask that folks make an appointment so that they can save a spot, and we have ample supplies. No appointment is necessary, but it is helpful for the providers if we make an appointment. Again, there's information about that was sent home through School Messenger. It's also on our social media sites as well, or you can visit our school webpage for more information. Morris also has a running club called Girls on the Run. It's a opportunity for girls to engage in some physical fitness and also learn life lessons that are particular to young ladies. And so they had their meet this past week at in Holyoke, and they had an opportunity to participate in their race with over 500 students from across the state. And so they were really excited to do that. And again, I want to give a special thanks to the principal, Brenda Kelly, for putting together such a great program, but not also putting it together, but also coaching it. And I think that's rare to see a school administrator roll up their sleeves and pitch in to work as a coach. So we really appreciate her efforts in supporting the program from a high level, but also from a boots on the ground level as well. And then finally, rounding out the good news over at Morris, they're planning a Friendsgiving feast for the 23rd. And the theme this year is building community. So they're busily preparing for that with their staff at Morris and working with their parents who are going to be partners in putting on that event. Across the district, we participated in a countywide professional development opportunity that was planned by the superintendent's roundtable across the county. And on November the 2nd, we had over 1,100 teachers choose from over 60 different workshops that were held in locations all throughout the county, from north to south and everywhere in between. Lenox was asked to host some events, and we graciously agreed to do so. And we were lucky enough to be the site of the keynote speech that kicked off the entire event with Pam Garamone, who's a speaker on positive psychology, and she presented from the Duffin Theater. And then folks around the state, around the county, also tuned in remotely in the keynote. But I know that there's folks from the Superintendent's Roundtable were quite appreciative of Lenox serving the host site on that day. One thing that's important to note, and I don't know that the Berkshire Eagle got this entirely right, the headline said that it was a day of self-care for teachers. And while there were some sessions that were reserved for that, the vast majority of them were opportunities for students or for teachers to enhance their craft and their own knowledge base in their area of instruction. So I just don't want it to be perceived as it was just a day for teachers to engage in wellness, as maybe the headline read, but it really was a meaningful learning opportunity for teachers to dig in and do some high quality work with like peers across the county. And then finally, this past week, we hosted an assistive technology roadshow from the United Cerebral Palsy group of Western Massachusetts. Their mobile lab visited over at the high school at the end of the day. And they came in and they set up in one of our classrooms to show off assistive technology and devices to make independent living easier for folks who have either physical, visual, or audio impairments. And some of the devices they have are amazing, from eye gaze software to virtual reality software that would help you practice certain events, like, how do you contact emergency help if you're living alone, to spoons and forks that were specially designed so that if you had cerebral palsy, you could still eat without dropping food. And so it was really a wonderful opportunity to see these things. And what was amazing to me was that the United Cerebral Palsy of Western Mass loans these devices out for free. All you need to do is get in contact with them, and there's no insurance necessary. And so if you've ever worked with trying to secure assistive technology for students, you know what a Herculean task it can be. So for them to do this free of charge and try to really make the barrier to entry low was refreshing. And I was stunned. So I had to, double checked I heard them correctly when they said this was free, and they assured me that yes, they do loan out this equipment for free. So we were really excited to have them come and showcase their wares. I'd love them to come out again next year, and maybe do an even bigger event for the public. So we can share this, because this is a really fantastic group and they do some really nice work. Also, just want to remind folks that winter sports are now open for registration. We're offering boys and girls alpine skiing, boys and girls Nordic skiing, boys and girls basketball, a co-op ice hockey team for 8th through 12th graders in conjunction with Mount Everett, and also a swimming program for students 9 through 12 along with Monument. So if you're interested in winter sports, certainly reach out to Dave Pugh or to the administration at LMHS to get signed up. But we're excited to move into the next season, and hopefully we do just as well this winter as we did this fall. The next item on our report is a budget presentation, and I'm going to ask Melissa Falkowski, our Assistant Director for Business and Operations, to share a brief overview of where we are in the budget process. It's really important to us to be transparent and to keep the community informed of the budget as we move through the development cycle. So she'll provide a brief update as to where we are and what lies ahead. Let me just apologize for the delay. Melissa is pulling up her presentation right now and needs to share her screen. It'll be just a second.
Okay, can everyone see that screen? With the, is it up on your,
My computer's asleep.
oh, you see it, okay, good. So we wanted to give you a budget update for the FY 2023 budget. The budget season has begun already. We're very new into it for 23. It's a few weeks in, and we just want to let you know where we are and what we do know at this point and the next steps after this initial phase. So in October and November of 21, we do ask that capital requests be submitted. And these come from the principals of the buildings and directors of departments, if they have any. And we have received them and the review has begun. There are smaller projects, there are larger projects at both buildings, but some can be done in this capital project year and some will be prioritized for next capital project year. So that has begun. Principals and program heads and department chairs have their budgets now, and they receive a template that gives them historical information plus a blank for this year's request. So they are currently working on that, the chairs at the middle and high school and at the elementary level, along with special ed and technology. So that's in progress, and that'll continue for the next few weeks. Included in that template is a staffing chart. So it shows current staff for each building, each department, and the principals and department chairs and directors will ask if, for any additional, or if they're reducing, this is where they review and then go forward and we have a discussion about what the needs are and if the staff is adequate or if there are any transfers, et cetera, that need to occur. That happens at the department and building level and then moves to the district-wide administration level with Mark and myself and the principals and chairs. The custodial budgets are being developed as well. I'll be working with the custodial, the head custodians at each building, and that will begin the week of November 29th. And I'm going to work with both head custodians so that we can combine purchasing power. Typically, it's been a little separated by building and typically even using the same vendor. So I am working this year to improve that process and get them to purchase together in bulk for a better price, and then we'll deliver to the separate buildings. Many times they use the same supplies. The central office is being developed as well, and the technology budget is being developed. When we spoke about a month ago about the budget, we did talk about pulling technology out and creating a separate budget for the technology department. It had been built into the middle and high school and the elementary school as line items, but we've pulled that out because it really is a district-wide expense run by the director of technology or managed at least by that position. So we are pulling that out and that is in progress. So November and December, I begin to do salary computations and rollover computations for the units that we have. And as we do that, then if there's any personnel changes, we receive notice of retirements, resignations, contractual obligations, that will be tweaked and is a living document until we get to the point where it's finalized. So that is in process and that stays in process. We do have some preliminary idea of what the rollover is. from salaries this year to salaries next year for one of the units. And then you can take the budgeted from last year to next year's anticipated. And there is a bit of a difference because we did have a lot of change after the budget was adopted. We had 3 resignations in August, and so that creates change in salary levels. So that is an ongoing process that will continue until the last day. And lastly, during this time, we try to determine what special revenues we will have available for offset to the operating budget. The largest special revenue that we use is the school choice receipt revenues that the district receives. And at this point, I'm estimating 1.6 million will be able to be used to offset the operating budget. And that's based upon expenditures budgeted for this year, plus new revenues received this year. There is an adjustment in December of the monthly allocation that we receive for school choice, and that may change a little bit. It is an estimate, but it will be in that ballpark. Our circuit breaker reimbursement is another revenue that we utilize to offset the operating budget. Last year's budget only used 11,000. This is a 3-year process. So we put the claims in year 1. The reimbursement revenues come in year 2, and then we utilize it in the budget in year 3. So we know exactly how much funding we have to utilize in the next year's budget. And in 2020, we received in only 11,000 and some change. The circuit breaker reimbursement formula was adjusted to include transportation, so we're receiving more in this year's receipts. So that'll be an increase of about 40,000 for next year's budget to offset expenditures.
Also, can you just share for the audience who may not be hip to our lingo what circuit breaker means?
Yes, a circuit breaker is a special fund that was developed to reimburse for special education expenses. So when you have expenses that are above the foundation budget level, which is about 46,000 now, it goes up every year. So when you have expenses above that amount for special education, you're allowed to submit for reimbursement for the amount above the foundation budget. And if in any year, another portion of this, and we have not qualified for it, if you have 125% more than you did the prior year, you can apply for more revenue. That happens in the spring when you know where your expenses will be. But Lenox has not gotten to that point where they can apply for that. But it is above the foundation of about 46. You receive a reimbursement percentage, which is about 60 to 70% of your costs. So if it's 46,000 and you spend 50, that 4,000 you receive 60 to 70% back. And that's what that calculation is. So that's the 51,000. And there's other local receipts that are not state revenues. We have tuition that we receive for the Richmond students that attend our district and also our pre-K students. And that is estimated to be about 130,000 available for next year as an offset. And then we also have other local smaller funds, such as community contributions, miscellaneous receipts, use of facilities when a group uses the facilities and we receive payment for use of that goes into a fund that we can utilize for the facilities. And also athletics is part of that. So those are other local receipts that we also use. Last year, the total special revenues used to offset the operating budget was about 1.882 million. This is just a tad less. So it's in the ballpark as to what we utilized last year. It's 1.78 or 1.79. So we're very close to the 1.8 that we utilize. So we're not seeing a deficit there in the offset revenues, which is a good thing. So then December and January, what we continue to do is adjust salary levels with notice of retirements, replacements if necessary, and any resignations. And then we begin to merge the individual department budgets into one complete budget document. That is what you receive at some point in January, I think. So before we do that, we are meeting with the principals and the directors and going over all of their line items so that we understand what their requests are and that we are all bringing forward a budget that we feel is a common goal for us. So once we get there, then the process is individual departments come and speak to you, and then we go to adoption by the school committee and vote by the town. But this is where we are right now, still preliminary stages, but we're moving along.
Thank you, Melissa.
Okay, so now I'm going to move on. I'm going to share my screen. Actually, before I do that, let me jump down and I'll come back to the screen sharing piece. So just wanted to share with folks that we're moving forward with a conversion for our email platform. So we're moving from Gmail, from Microsoft Exchange to Gmail as a server. And there will be no change really to the users. Most of the changes will be under the hood, so to speak. All email addresses will remain the same. They'll still have an at linuxps.org as their suffix. And no student or staff emails will be changed. We've had 17 users kind of test what this would look like, including yours truly. And we've had no problems with using Gmail. All of our emails are flowing in and out with no problems. For all of our staff, the historical emails they have in the old system will be migrated over. There was a cost associated to that, but we felt that it was necessary to make sure they had their historical emails. And then we're also bringing over the historical emails for our seniors based on the fact that they may have been in contact with colleges and coaches and these types of things. And so we want to make sure that they had access to any historical emails that they need. All historical emails for all users, students and staff, will still be archived in the old system. So we'll always have access to those should we need to go back and look up an individual one. But for us, the cost is the migration piece and pulling them into your new accounts. For the remaining students from kindergarten all the way through juniors, we're not bringing over their historical emails. They'll have to back those emails up manually. And we'll make sure that we continue to message that to the students and to their families so that they can do that. But again, if there's ever an email that they need for whatever reason, we could certainly go and retrieve that for them on a case-by-case as needed basis. And so the conversion is slated to go live on November 29th. I'm pretty sure that it's all going to go smoothly. Like I said, our 17 users love it. No interruptions. The real big benefit is that as a Gmail user and we use a host of other Google applications as well, that's free versus what we would have to pay for Microsoft Exchange. And then also we have unlimited storage space, which again, we have to pay for additional storage on rural platforms. So we're excited that it's a cost saver. It also gives us enhanced capacity and also enhanced protection. And so to us that we want to make sure that we have the best encryption possible to keep our data safe out of the hands of bad actors. A few more reminders. Grades close today for Morris. Report cards will go home November the 30th. Parent conferences are scheduled for December 2nd and 3rd. The grades at LMMHS closed in November. The actual date, I think it was the 9th for the first term. They'll get their report cards on November 17th. And parent conferences at the high school are scheduled for December 1st and December 3rd. Also tomorrow night, there will be a opportunity for parents and students to come and engage in conversation with the administrators from Eleanor HS in their Coffee and Conversation series. That starts at 7 p.m. in the Eleanor HS library. It's really designed to be an open forum where kids come and discuss, but the focus of the evening is on the reopening of schools, where we are, where we're seeing what we need to support students as pandemic returning to school. So that's the latest from the schools. And now we'll go back to the day plan bullet that's on the schedule. So I'll share my screen. And hopefully I can get this. Okay, Melissa, give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen sharing on your side. All right, so we're good to go. So what I'd like to share with you today is a presentation on how we're working to bring the strategic plan to life. And you can kind of see in this opening graphic that we have a hiker who's looking off into the distance and thinking around where he wants to go and how he's going to get there. And that's kind of how I think about the strategic plan. Is it gives us our roadmap forward, and our job is to try to bring that plan to life and make sure that it's something that we're planning toward at all of our schools and in all that we do here. So first, we'll start with a quick overview or review of the strategic plan. This is available on our website, but really I wanted to just set the stage. So the strategic plan has eight major initiatives, and you can see them here. So they're leadership, technology, curriculum and instruction, mental health, inclusivity, finance, facilities, and professional development. And these were developed by the stakeholder groups that worked on developing the strategic plan through their meetings, through their surveys, and discussions with stakeholders. They identified these 8 areas as areas of focus moving forward. So just to kind of unpack these a bit, professional development, we say that in the strategic plan, the focus was to increase the staff's influence in professional development decisions and giving them a voice in their learning as professionals. In the leadership domain, we want to have a focus on empowering an elected instructional leadership team to participate in decision-making. So you'll see in a lot of these that shared decision-making is an ongoing theme. With our facilities, develop and prioritize a plan for future capital projects, and that's already underway. We have a school building committee that's looking at that. Technology, to be more intentional in optimizing digital learning resources. We have a new technology director, and we're taking some major steps forward, I think, in optimizing our digital learning resources and also just some of the other digital backbone of the district, and to help us do business in a way that's more predictable, more stable, and more secure. Under the finance goal, we're looking to create responsible budgets that coordinate district resources to support the academic program. Melissa shared a little bit about where we are in that process, and she'll continue to offer periodic updates to the budget process, where we are, where we're going, and we want to keep everyone informed of the process as we move through and make it as transparent as we can. It's really important to us to do that. And again, when we look at creating budgets, we're looking at everything with a fresh set of eyes and looking for folks to justify their requests, and we're going through those things and making sure that everything that's requested is indeed warranted and that we're operating our schools in the most efficient and effective ways that we can. Then in curriculum and instruction, the goal is to ensure curriculum and instruction supports diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also student wellness. So again, we'll be taking a look at our curriculum and instruction over the term of the strategic plan, which is a 5-year cycle, and making sure that our curriculum is refreshed in ways that include multiple stories and make sure that students see themselves in curriculum and that curriculum serves as both a window and a mirror to the world for our learners. Under the strategic plan, the last two large ideas are inclusivity and mental health. So the inclusivity objective is to establish clear expectations for inclusivity in a culture and to help students engage in disagreement and debate through the curricular activities in ways that are helping them develop their debate, public speaking skills. And we're looking at how we can attach that to concrete changes that we track and measure to ensure that we're accountable for doing that job well. And so, again, this is not to say that we use critical race theory or whatever you might read or hear about in the news, but really is to say, let's teach facts using primary documents, and let's allow students the freedom and flexibility to wrestle with these things and be in dialogue with one another. And so we wanted to try to really help prepare students to be future members of society that can go out and engage in civil debates in ways that are free of all the other value loading that maybe sometimes enters into these conversations. And then under our mental health goal, we want to enhance social and emotional competencies through inclusive instruction, integrating social and emotional learning into the classroom, and particularly using our multi-tiered systems of support to support our students both academically, but also social emotionally as well, and making sure that we're doing all that we can to plug those students into resources and help them be healthy, happy, and successful at school. So with 8 strategic objectives, I would say that the plan is simultaneously ambitious. That's a lot, trying to do 8 things at the same time. And it's robust, right? So it's also, I think, well conceived, and it's something that I think is worth working towards. So I'm really excited by the strategic plan. It was one of the documents that I was able to look at during the recruitment process, and I felt that there was some strong values alignment, and that the team had done a great job, I think, of really digging in and doing some high quality work to come up with the strategic plan to guide the district in the next 5 years. But I think sometimes when you have 8 competing initiatives, you can kind of feel like you're not quite sure where to start. And so sometimes you kind of look at this and it feels like everything has to all be done at the same time. So we want to make sure that we're offering a little bit more focus and coherence to the work so that folks don't feel like they're all over the map as they're trying to go in and do their daily work. So what happens with strategic plans is they're very big global documents at a high level. But we have classroom teachers who are saying, okay, but how do I plan for tomorrow, right? And so what we really want to do a good job of is taking that high level plan and focusing that so that teachers know what they should be sort of rowing toward as part of our overall school district, right? And so we want to make sure that our principals and our teachers are able to wrap their minds around the plan and can take this in digestible pieces so that we can further all these initiatives over time. So that brings to question, how do we bring this plan to life? So to me, the best path forward is to engage in intentional planning. And so one of the research supported ways to do this is by developing and implementing what we call 100-day plans. And they are exactly what the name implies. It's a plan that guides you through the first 100 days. And the reason that they kind of break it out that way is that these are reasonable in size. And it's something they can easily communicate to the organization and your stakeholders. So you can really say to teachers, hey, this is what we're trying to do in school. To the children, this is what we're really working towards. To our parents, this is what we're engaging you as stakeholders to support your children and our teachers as we work toward achieving these strategic plans. So the 100-day plans we think are a great path forward. And so I asked all of our administrators to put 100-day plans together. So 100-day plan is a framework that combines both continuous improvement, because we always want to be moving forward as an organization, but we also need to make sure that we're layering in the professional learning so that we're not outpacing the district's ability to embrace the change we're asking them to participate in. And so we want to make sure that we're providing teachers the support and the learning opportunities that they need to do this work well. We want to make sure we provide a clear instructional focus for the school so that, again, there's no ambiguity for teachers and they really understand what their role is in the organization. Implement progress monitoring as a tool for school leaders to gauge the effectiveness, to hold themselves accountable, and to have data-driven conversations with their teachers. These 100-day plans are not etched in stone, they're living documents. And so if they need to be changed and modified, we want our staff to have the flexibility to do that. And they really emanate from a stance that believes that engagement precedes alignment. And we'll dig into that a little bit further in a couple of slides. So what's the difference between engagement and alignment? So alignment is kind of the old way of doing things. We put together a set of state and national academic standards, and we said, we have to make sure that all our work aligns to that, right? And so that really centers on a question about what do we need to do? Engagement shifts that conversation and says, why do we need to do those things? Why is it important to teach to these standards? Why are the standards important? And so it's a deeper question that I think makes our work more foundational and more fundamental. Alignment is also more focused on doing things right. And engagement shifts that a little bit and says that we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And so, again, giving a little bit more clarity and making sure that we're also having conversations with our stakeholders and with our administrators and with our teachers to make sure that we're doing the right things for kids. Engagement encourages ownership over teaching and learning, where alignment focuses on generating buy-in. And so buy-in doesn't necessarily give ownership, right? It just kind of says, we agree to do these things, but ownership really comes shoulder to shoulder to the work together. And so we really want to embrace that stance. And I think that's something that comes through in the strategic plan many times in terms of having shared ownership, shared voice, shared decision-making, distributed leadership. Alignment, when we think about that, is something that is an outcome of good management, and engagement is a function of good leadership. And so we really want our principals to be leaders rather than managers. Instead of just ticking off boxes and getting stuff done, we want them to set visions and then layer in supports and help folks achieve those goals. And alignment is kind of a backward-looking stance. And so we're looking at success in the present based on what we did in the past, whereas engagement is saying, what do we need to do to be successful in the future? What do we need to put into place today so that tomorrow we can do the things we want to do? And so alignment shifts the thinking from policies, practices, and procedures, and embraces beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors as the real drivers of the work that we do in schools. So they both, engagement and alignment, layer in responsibility for all of the actors, but instead of focusing just on accountability for accountability's sake, engagement thinks about involvement. How do we really get folks together to do the work in a shared way with shared ownership? Instead of focusing on compliance, I'm going to do these things. If I don't, I'm going to get in trouble. We really want people to be bought in under a sense of commitment, that we want to do this because it's the right thing to do. It's the best thing to do for our kids. And so moving from compliance to commitment is really important to us. And again, I think that also comes through in the strategic plan as you read that closely. And we want to make sure that we're focusing on implementing the plan in a way that drives successful implementation of the initiatives that are laid out there, those 8 big ideas, rather than trying to keep them all kind of as equal priorities, right? And so we want to get really, I think, strategic around the way that we implement that plan. So if we wanted to see compliance, which would be the old way of doing work under the alignment system, you would focus on the what. What do we need to do? How do I need to do it? And then why do I need to do it? If we want to focus on commitment, which is where I think we really want to be, we focus on the why. Why is this important? Why should we do this? Why is this good for kids? And then how do we do these things? And then what do we need to do it well and do it successfully? So it kind of inverts the model in a sense. So we asked all of our administrators at Lenox Public Schools, including our building principals and all department chairs, not department chairs, all department directors, to put together strategic plans or mini strategic plans, what we're calling 100-day plans, to really focus in on some of the bigger priorities that were laid out by the strategic planning committee. So the goal really, as I mentioned earlier, is to provide focus and coherence. And so we really want to focus on a year at a time. So we asked leaders back at the end of the summer to start thinking about what are the things that they wanted to do in 2021, 22. And it wasn't enough just to say, oh, we're going to go back to school. And, I know COVID was hard, but, we're just going to go back and see what happens. We really wanted to make sure we had direction and we had goal, and that we were able to simplify and clarify the work so that our teachers knew what was expected of them, students knew what was expected, and families also knew what to expect. So to do this process, I asked all of our folks to complete a template, which looks kind of like this, and it has multiple sections. We asked our administrators to identify areas of need and zoom in on the greatest area of need, develop a theory of action, then create a SMART goal, a goal that's specific, measurable, attainable, reasonable, and time-bound. Then design an action plan to meet that with steps, the resources needed, who's responsible, and a timeline for implementation. To focus on the messaging, again, we talked about the importance of having the why, and so we want to make sure that purpose was really clear for all of the folks in the organization to understand not just what was going to be expected of them, but also really starting with why this was important in the first place, and developing a communication plan to share that with the stakeholders. So that's the template that each administrator was asked to create. And again, to me, and I threw in this quote from Benjamin Franklin, that success is the residue of planning. And again, I do think that from my experience as an educator, from my experience as an athlete, that planning and consistent practice and programming is really important. And that when you do those things well, day in and day out, success follows. So in Morris Elementary, Brenda Keller, the principal, put together her plan there. And her goal is to plan effective small group differentiated instruction. And this was one that was a takeaway or a silver lining, so to speak, from the COVID pandemic. They really did see that small group instruction that had high degrees of differentiation was tremendously effective to helping meet the needs of students. And so this is something that teachers talking with Brenda said, this is something we should really continue doing. We want to make this a focus of supporting kids by using small group instruction as a return. So she's tied professional learning to this, as well as coaching support from some of the specialists in her school, and using those mechanisms. They're making sure that their teachers have access to strategies this year that help to promote student engagement during that small group instruction for the major core subjects of English language arts, which we call ELA, and math. And so ways that she's looking to measure this is through instructional rounds, which is really going on with a team of folks to collect validation data in classrooms. So we might say, if I'm looking for differentiated instruction, I should see these elements, and then going in with a checklist and saying, do I see evidence of these things? And then if so, what's leading to that? If not, where do we need to go back and redouble efforts to make sure that we're getting the results that we're looking for, that we want to see? She's also been working closely with her team to look at student benchmark data and also progress monitoring data as well. And I've had the opportunity to sit on some of their data discussions, and they do a tremendous job of really looking at grade levels, at classes, and at individual students. So they're making sure that no one slips through the cracks and that no one's left behind in Morris. So this is an ongoing process that they'll be reviewing data regularly and using professional learning meetings to work as teachers to review data and also plan lessons together, making sure that they're creating the time and space for this plan to come to life that Brenda's putting together at Morris. And this relates back to the strategic plan by supporting students, both learning and their mental well-being through purposeful teacher planning and using data to drive instruction. So it's the shared leadership and curriculum and instruction goals of the plan that it ties to. And again, I think it's great to hear teacher voice in that process and to see that we're really focusing on teaching and learning as we're returning to in-person instruction. So at LMHS, I asked both Mike and Brent, the principal and assistant principals there, to put together 100-day plans. Even though at a high school you have an assistant principal and a principal, the jobs sound similar, they can be different in function. So let me make sure that both folks had a specific plan that they put together to guide their work this year. So for Mike Knievel, his goal is to ensure that LMHS has a vertical and horizontally integrated, inclusive and engaging curriculum for grades 6 through 12 that's adapted to help kids as they recover from the impact of COVID. And so again, I had an opportunity to sit together with the department heads, and they had a really great conversation around what students are missing as they're returning, what they need, and how to put those supports into place, and what would have to be aligned for those things to happen, what would have to be arranged for those things to happen. And it was such an engaging and refreshing conversation to hear professionals come together and focus on children and doing what's best for students. And so they were really connected to that work. They're using the DESE acceleration roadmap to help guide that. And they have department meetings, again, when they're focusing on work. They're using our PD days to continue to look for ways and work together with partners to best support our students. They're using benchmark data, just like we do at elementary school, as long as other data sources from the MCAS, the PSATs, the SATs, to help understand where the needs lie today and moving forward. And really what Mr. Knight was hoping is that this will be something that helps him to work with the staff to rethink how they can best schedule for students at both the middle and the high schools to support their learning as they think into next year, whether that's enhanced time for learning, whether that's more time for students to visit labs, maybe for math or for language or writing to get extra help if they need that. So that's an ongoing discussion with the team over at LMHS.
Mike, could you explain to people who might not be professional educators like myself?
Sure.
Vertically and horizontally integrated?
Sure. So that's a great question. So when we think about curriculum, right? Curriculum is kind of a matrix or a map or a list of all that we need to teach, right? And so today, that's largely driven by the academic standards that are given to us by DESE and by the federal government as well. And then what they do is all of those standards should work across the curriculum so that one thing leads to the next across the same grade level or across multiple grade levels. And then so at an elementary school, you might want to make sure that students are doing curriculum that is the same across all the classrooms that teach fifth grade. And so it doesn't mean that they all get to teach the same thing the same day at the same time, but that the same content gets covered, whether you have Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Jones, or Mrs. Smith. And then vertically, or vertical articulation or vertical integration, make sure that the learning year to year is sequential so that you can backward map from what a 12th grader needs to know all the way back to kindergarten so that every year we're working toward building the foundational skills that they need and layering those on each year until they get to that ultimate point of graduation. So that's important work, and that's work that we still have to do quite a bit of work around. And it was one of the things that came to light in our MASC accreditation visit that is an area of growth for us. And so we have been talking about that and the need to work with a team to start to develop those integrations. And so I think that this is a goal that is spot on in terms of the work that we need to do. And I think with COVID, it's more important now than ever. The opposite of that would be you have teachers that I may call virtuosos, where they kind of are a great teacher, but in their class, they kind of do their own thing. And oftentimes wonderful things happen. Great student learning happens with these virtuoso teachers. But it's difficult because not everyone's a virtuoso, or they may just have different areas of focus or different passion projects. And so you don't get the same level of consistency, classroom to classroom. And or if one of those teachers retires or leaves, then all of the great things that happen in the classroom are now gone, right? So we want to build in sustainability and predictability so we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum for all of our students. Mr. Knivel also provided a second goal to improve the scheduling process by looking at curriculum, the current course offerings, the enrollment numbers for those courses, and also the future needs of students. That balances the needs of students and also a priority on fiscal responsibility, and also making sure we're including stakeholders. And again, that ties back to the shared leadership and financial pieces of the strategic plan. And they're looking to have a slightly different course selection process with new course selection sheets this year, and soliciting more feedback from students, parents, and teachers on how to improve that process. Brent, his number one goal was looking at how to improve school safety. And so we've had meetings with Lenox PD and the Massachusetts State Police, and talked about the need to conduct what the state police call a safety reset after the disruptions of the last 18 months. So prior to learning remotely and some of the disruptions around COVID, schools are doing a lot of work around enhancing safety, and then kind of just pushed pause. So they want to make sure that we're circling back to that, we're refreshing that, we're kind of re-engaging some of those, safety planning muscles, both for our students and for our staff, so that we're ready to re-engage and start rethinking around ways to enhance that at all times of our school day. And as part of that, a presentation was provided to the faculty and the staff of LMMHS. We also did a similar one, just for the audience's sake, at Morris as well, to revisit the protocols. And both the state police and Lenox police offered teachers the opportunity to invite them into their classrooms if they would like a classroom level safety evaluation on ways that they can enhance and promote safety in their own classrooms. And then also looking ahead and saying, what are some new protocols and or infrastructure that we can look at to enhance safety? I think one of the ones that really stood out to us is an electronic system for accessing the exterior doors, whether it's a key fob or a swipe card. But that's a pretty standard design, I think, in most schools today, that we have a way for faculty and staff and selected visitors to have those devices to enter the building. It gives us a log of who came in, who went out, and it allows us a lot more control rather than relying on someone to either hold the door open, let you in, or use a manual key that we don't have as much control over. And we can easily disable cards for folks if we don't want to have access to the building versus a key. Once it's kind of out in circulation, it's out in circulation. So we're working on making progress with those safety goals. We do have some bids out to gauge the cost of installing an enhanced security system on the doors, so that we can have that opportunity to allow more control of access for our buildings. And then Brent's second goal is evaluating the SEL needs of students and also our faculty and staff. And so sometimes in the SEL conversation, we forget about the adults in our organizations too, but they've also been impacted by the pandemic. So we want to think about our global school community, students, families, faculty, and staff, and what the needs are for all of our stakeholders. And so we're looking to do some stakeholder surveys, get some information from folks, and then building a plan to meet the emotional and social needs of our school community. And then Brent's last goal is a teacher evaluation reset, as he calls it. And so this is a return to or revisiting of a teacher evaluation practice. Again, during the pandemic, that was maybe done in very different ways. And so we want to get back to focusing on using evaluations to give teachers high quality feedback to improve their teaching and ultimately impact student learning. And so we want to make sure that all of our teachers are observed and all of our teachers are evaluated, and that they have a chance to engage in goal setting for themselves each year and setting professional targets for themselves. And so that's one of the third goals that was shared by Brent. Over in student services, Kim Dion shared a goal that focuses on creating transition planning forms for students beginning at the age of 14 that are more individualized to reflect what the students want to do as they transition into adulthood or think about their life post-school. So we're legally required to start engaging in that process with students through the IEP process at age 14. And one of the things that Kim has realized since coming on board was that many of our transition plans were not really individualized to students. They were kind of a one-size-fits-all plan that almost every student had the same plan. And so that's something that we can definitely do a better job in. And it's something that would be expected of us as we go through special education monitoring from the state in terms, or the federal government, and making sure that we're meeting the needs of our learners and also meeting the letter of the law in terms of making sure that we're doing high quality transition plans that are uniquely tailored to individuals and not just a one size fits all, something we pick from a drop down menu. And so that's something that ties back to the curriculum and instruction, and also I think the mental well-being of our students. And really, this is a way to get them to be prepared to enter into the workforce or be college and career ready based on the plan that they develop with their IEP team. So some of the things that they're still working on as a department is identifying and prioritizing the needs in the transition planning process, and then doing some work to re-educate her staff in ways to optimize this, and then sharing the plan with families, especially the ones in CPAC who have shared with me that they feel sometimes a little disengaged from the district. And so we really want to reach out to CPAC and restore those relationships and learn from them what it feels like as a parent of a special education student in the district and where we can do better. And then ultimately, we would like to develop student surveys and create student-centered presentations for IEP meetings. And so one of the best practices is for students to kind of lead their own IEP meetings. And that's something that Kim is really excited to work toward. Melissa presented earlier on the budget, but she's also submitted a 100-day plan that ties to finance and operations. And her number one goal was to improve the budgeting process and the budgeting materials that we use in the process, making the schedule and the information relevant and transparent. So I think Melissa and I share a very similar mindset in this regard, that we really think that the budget process should be transparent, that we want to make sure that people are kept engaged and that we're open and honest all the way through, and that it's as transparent and visible as possible. And so we believe that doing that will provide clear and consistent evidence to the community of financial stewardship, that we're creating budgets that demonstrate value, and that we're taking steps to better communicate district finances and how those things work and what the process is. The budget is currently being developed, and the goal really is to land at a budget that's easily understood to non-school finance individuals, and that it's easy for people to pick up and understand, see where monies come in, see where they go out, and see how they're applied. And so Melissa has, shared with me and gets really excited about talking about this, about really putting together a budget that is much more accessible for everyone to be able to make sense of. And so I think that's a very important goal. And I give her a lot of credit for seeing things that way, because I think it's easy for us to just kind of fall back on our insider knowledge of how this thing works, but not always be as clear as we can with folks outside of education and outside of schools. Melissa also supplied a second goal, which is also, I think, really important for us to consider. And this is to improve our purchasing, bidding, and contracting procedures. And so we talked a little bit even tonight around the need to try to develop efficiencies across some of our buildings. If we're procuring services or goods from the same contractor, to take advantage of doing that together. It saves us time, it saves us costs. It allows us to also make sure that we're more equitable in the way that we distribute resources across the district and across both schools. And so I'm happy to hear that this is something that Melissa is taking a look at. And as part of our overall budget process, as we receive the requests from principals, then Melissa works, dedicated to trying to, one, verify that these are necessary, but then two, trying to go out there and really solicit the best possible pricing. As a purchasing officer endorsed by the state of Massachusetts, there are certain processes we have to follow legally depending on the size of the purchase. But for the ones that don't meet that threshold, we want to make sure that we're getting the best possible deal. And so Melissa spends a lot of time checking prices and negotiating with vendors to make sure that we're getting the best possible deal and keeping our budget costs down. And then our final goal ties to kind of the latter half of her title, and that's improving facilities management. And so really focusing on taking a look at our overall physical plant and our capital projects, and starting to strategize and prioritize those, and also thinking about ways that we can efficiently and effectively fund our building needs, so that we have a school that is safe, a school that is equipped with optimal opportunities for students to learn, and is a place for teachers to teach safely and to the maximum ability that they can. And so, again, this is something that's an ongoing process, but I think that it's also one that's well worth the effort and undertaking to really put together that capital plan. And so I'm really impressed with Melissa, wanted to dig in right away on that. Technology has been an area where we've been maybe a little bit under-resourced in some ways. And Randy McLeod, our new technology director, has taken a fresh look at technology overall. He has a lot of ideas and ambitions, but in his 100-day plan, he really tried to, I think, narrow that down and focus on a couple of key items for us. And number one is the conversion of our student information system. So all schools have a database that we call a student information system. We are using a really unique system called Rediker, which is a small company out of, I think, the Wilbraham area, who kind of does some spot building. It was founded by a former teacher, but they don't have the size, the breadth, or the depth of support and personnel and programmers and support folks to match a lot of the other systems that are out there. And we are way behind in terms of applying the necessary updates to Rediker. And the reason for that is because if we were to do that, it's going to break other software patches that we have that tie systems together. So this is a real pain point for anyone who works on the back end of running schools. I know Amy's here, and she would probably attest to the fact that it is a major headache using the system day in and day out. In fact, we don't even have a common system across the district. We have a Rediker database that's built for one school and one that's built for another school. And so we need to run reports we have to export reports out of each of those systems and recombine them in another software, whether that's Google Sheets or Excel, to put together lists so we can see all of our district in one place. Super inefficient, very cumbersome. It causes a lot of headaches and really doesn't allow us to get information that we should be able to quickly get. Like if someone says, how many teachers do you have? I'd say, well, we'll get back to you on that one because we have to go into both these systems and cobble together and put in this third place. And so those are things that should be very easy for us to drive out. And so looking at new information systems has been a priority of Randy. And we have met with a couple of vendors. They put presentations together for a group of stakeholders who has recommended that we move forward with Power School, which is probably the national leader in student information systems. And so we've been in discussions with them in terms of pricing and what a rollover or a migration or conversion from Medica to Power School will look like. The second one was mentioned earlier today already, so Randy's already well at work on meeting this goal, and that's the migration from the Exchange server to Gmail. And so that's already begun. And I think I reviewed some of the same information that's shared by Randy here. But I think, again, this will give us much more efficiency in being able to take advantage really of the Google products that we use day to day. They all speak together very well, and they're easy to embed and share, but also gives us world-class protection, which right now we are a frequent target for all kinds of different, whether it's phishing scams or attacks from hackers. And so we need to make sure that we're focusing on the technology security infrastructure, the backbone of our of how we do business, so that we're able to continue to do school uninterrupted, continue to pay our folks uninterrupted, and don't become victims of some of these heists and other things that we learned about where people are doing these ransom attacks. And so this would be one step, toward a more safer way for us to do our work. And then Randy's third goal is to implement, it's kind of a two-pronged thing here, an asset tracking system and a help desk. So before Randy came, if a teacher needed help with something, they would just send an email. And so when those emails would hit the two folks that we had that work in our technology department, we're a very small shop, they would be inundated with multiple requests and at first glance kind of all seem equal priority, and trying to meet that was really difficult. And it can't just be done on a first come, first served basis because we have to prioritize the needs, So someone saying that, I can't get into my computer at all might be more important than someone saying, I need a new ink cartridge for my printer. And so they are working to implement a help desk system that a teacher submits a ticket, they get one, which is believe it or not, just a big improvement for us, a receipt that says, yes, we got your request. Because part of why they got some emails in the past was there was always an open loop. And so it was impossible to get back and say, yes, I got your request. And so because they couldn't do that, teachers say, I don't know if they got it, so I'll email them again. And so they may get, multiple emails from the same ticket item or the same request. And so this helps to close that loop. To let teachers know that, yes, we've received your request, yes, you're in the queue, and allows them to get back to the queue. And it also allows us then to time how long it takes us to address certain needs and also be more strategic and efficient moving forward in how we address the technology needs of the district. So that's the help desk. And then also an asset tracking system. So one of the things that I think struck me and struck Melissa and struck Randy was that we didn't have a great system or a consistent system to track what was owned by the district, especially our expensive items. We want to make sure that everything that we have is asset tagged and is stored in a database so that we have a way to know what we own, who has what, has it been returned, has it walked off? We need to know those things. And also expand it from just technology, but to other assets in the district. So most places asset tag their furniture and those types of things as well, so that If something is lost, broken, or destroyed, again, we have a clear record of what that was. And then also, as we have to deaccession or get rid of equipment, it gives us a much easier way to do that in a way that we can assure that we're following all the state and federal guidelines for doing that, because there are certain assets or items that we buy that might be tied to a grant. So we have to make sure that they're tracked and coded in certain ways and depreciated in the right ways. And so having an asset tracking system really helps with that. And those are areas where when you have an audit, you don't have a good asset tracking system. One, you're going to certainly flag for it, but it is a nightmare trying to work through that, in real time with folks here trying to ask you about these pieces. So I see Melissa shaking her head, so I know that this is something that will also help her life be a little bit more organized and efficient, which Melissa loves, organization and efficiency. So when we think about strategic planning and planning in general, we really should be focused on a continuous planning process. We're always in the beginning, we're always in trying to improve, and it never kind of stops, right? And so the graphic here is from the DataWise work that's been done at Harvard University. And it kind of just walks you through the continuous ongoing improvement process, which begins with organizing, with starting to build your ability to use data well, to understand your data, to dig into and do an analysis, to then think about our own practice and how we're influencing and being influenced by the data, develop action plans based on what we find, how do we assess and monitor those plans, and then how do we act and assess and move forward, and then the plan kind of starts all over again. So strategic planning kind of starts this whole loop, and so this is what we always want to be kind of engaged in, is this preparation, this inquiry, and then action. One of the things that in the past you probably have had school teams or administrative teams present school improvement plans, and DESE has changed their requirements around school improvement planning. And so what used to be required is that all schools would create these improvement plans at the district level, and it was like a 5-year plan, and then we have a 3-year plan that would sit underneath that, and then they would have annual plans underneath those. DESE said, and got feedback from districts saying this is really inefficient, and we're taking up a lot of our time. We're taking up more time planning than actually implementing plans. We're a high-performing school. Do we have to still do this? And DESE listened to the feedback and said, you know what? We agree that some of our schools who are doing this work well could probably have a little bit more freedom and flexibility since you're demonstrating that you can do this stuff. And so they changed who has to participate in the process and who doesn't. And so schools that are doing well and are meeting the targets and have high test scores have been given kind of some freedom and flexibility. The schools in the state that are basically the lowest 15% have to, they're called focus or targeted support schools. And those schools do need to develop plans that are approved by DESE and that they're using to try to enhance their performance. And those are typically our underperforming or chronically underperforming schools. So Lenox is not one of those schools, but we still think that we should be involved in that continuing planning process. And so the way that I kind of see how this works is we have our strategic plan that's been developed. And then from that strategic plan, put together a larger, or not a larger, but a maybe more focused district plan and a school plan that says over the next 3 years, this is kind of what we want to work toward. And then each year have action plans then that work toward both that larger district and school plan that ties back to the strategic plan. So it's kind of like an umbrella. So we have the big strategic plan, then we have the district plan, the school plan, and then our annual plans of what we want to accomplish each year. And I think that keeps us focused on moving ahead. It gives us clarity. It gives us coherence. It allows us to do those 8 things, but without having to try to do 8 things all at the same time. And so it's a 3-pronged approach. We have our strategic plan, those middle plans or the 3-year long-term plans, and then annual action plans. And ultimately, all of this work and all these plans and all this effort really should lead to student learning. And at the end of the day, that's what's the most important thing to all of us. We want to make sure that we're planning in a really intentional way to ensure that we're doing all that we can and funneling all of our resources to promote optimum student learning. And so that's really how I kind of see the way that we take our strategic plan, bring it to life, and then connect it to student learning. Any questions?
Well,
Oh, let me stop sharing too.
yeah, I'm really pleased with this presentation. You've asked the administrators, your colleagues, to really consciously think about the next steps in moving the schools forward. And I think this is very comprehensive. I'm sure there are maybe some specific things that people might have questions about, but in general, I think that you've embarked on, a process that is, very likely to see positive results because of the conscious efforts for people to be having their vision of what they think it could look like and be working toward that vision. And I don't think that's always been there.
And I'd like to say that I think the thing that jumped out at me in different places, and it wasn't necessarily in the bullet points of what you were presenting, Mark, and what our administrative team was presenting, but I think it was an important highlight underneath it all. And it goes to the issue of, for example, of the, I forget the name that's called, but the students on IEPs who are then going to be supported in presenting. And in my sense, what I'm hearing from that, so correct me if I'm wrong, is in becoming self-advocates for their learning and for their life plans. And the engagement in that way, I feel like the building up to that engagement, including also what was mentioned at the Morris School about smaller group instruction that's differentiated, is what I really see in this is an opportunity. And it was, like I said, it wasn't an actual bullet point of student voice, student engagement, and tailoring some of the education to ensure that we are able to meet the needs of all learners and all students. And I think, in fairness, certainly I've heard, feedback that at times there are students that have fallen through the cracks. We talk about students who fall through the cracks. So within each of this, I see tailoring, and that helps me to feel like hopefully students are seen and heard, and teachers are supported in how do they adjust their instruction, and how does the community address its instruction to meet the needs of all these learners. And like I said, it's not the forefront, it's something I'm looking for, but I was kind of pulling from that, a lot of the thinking about the student in this work.
Yeah, and I think your analysis is spot on. And I think that that's one of the things that has come through to me through the initial entry planning process, through conversations with students, with parents, with teachers, is the need to continually find new ways to inject student voices, student agency into the process, give them ownership of their learning. And then also making sure that we're creating opportunities for teacher agency and teacher voice in the process. And I think that came through loud and clear in some of the raw data from the strategic planning work. And so if that theme is present, that's really intentional and by design. And I'm glad to see that, again, it's something that you can easily kind of tease out, in this pretty complex, quilt that we've presented tonight. But I think that that's something that we've been clear with our administration since our summer retreat, that those are core values to us as an organization, that it's, not a top-down, rule by fiat type of place, but we're really looking at giving people a voice, giving them opportunities to engage in the process. Our teachers, our parents, our community members, and our students. I mean, even our youngest learners, they're very good at telling you, what they need, what they like, what they want to see.
Anybody else wish to comment? Okay, why don't we move on then? Thank you, Mark.
Maybe you could just add the thank you to all the work for our admin team. I mean, I know that you can see it in what you presented, but they have daily duties, and this is additional work that I think informs their work and is helpful and focusing, but it's not an easy thing to do. So thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to subcommittees. Governance and Leadership is meeting tomorrow. Human Resources is kind of an ongoing thing because we're involved with negotiations at this point. So we'll be meeting every 2 weeks through April, and maybe additional meetings on top of that. Finance is meeting next week, and School Building Committee is meeting next week. I will say that School Building Committee, since our last meeting, I guess, I got to think for a second here, we did meet a week ago Monday, and we had a tour of the high school building and looked at a number of areas of concern. At our next meeting, which is next Monday night, we'll be actually talking about some of the educational, the concerns about the building as an educational facility in terms of what a modern learning space would look like versus what the learning spaces in 1966 looked like. So, and teaching and learning, December the 8th. And you had a meeting.
We had a meeting 2 weeks ago?
No, October.
Yes.
I know, we're in November already, yeah.
And School Culture and Community Relations had a meeting at the same time because it's the same group of people.
I will report that some of the opportunity that we did, because we've had a conversation, I think, in the school committee itself and then in subcommittees about where we sort of kind of inherited subcommittees that have existed for a while. And I think it's always good to stop for a minute and say, well, are we in these subcommittees because we just inherited them, or what is the charge? What are we here to actually do? Which I think is in a way similar to what Mark is modeling with administration around, okay, we have this committee, so what are we here to do? So we did spend some time really kind of toggling between both committees and aligning what we might be doing with the strategic plan. Again, trying to not just scattershot and look for all kinds of things to do, but to think about where some of the strategic initiatives need to live. And although we certainly recognize that having inclusive education and diverse opportunities and seeing all students and supporting our faculty can fit in the different categories of teaching and learning and school culture and community relations, we are trying to kind of tease those out and decide which committee is going to be primarily responsible for what. But we also do see some collaborative work around future engagement about how do we enhance school culture. We identified some concerns, and I think, again, it came up in some of Mark's 100-day planning, things such as how are we reporting and collecting data on bullying? How are we responding to students to ensure their safety? So a number of different issues that carried over from before, a lot of it from before COVID, because again, we're dealing in different learning environments. So we're going to continue on that route. We may do some things collaboratively with both committees. We may do them separately. We'll be posting our agendas around that. But I think that initial phase about what are we actually doing and how might we reform the duties of each of these committees to ensure that we're staying aligned with goals that have been set. And if we need to change them or adjust them, bringing that back to the committee for conversation. And one of the other things that I think I've mentioned a few times is there is legal precedence for creating student representation on our committee. And I'm working on, at least as the first person to draft something, but our committees will be taking a look at that so we can have student voice in our work as well.
Sounds good. So, yeah, so each of the committees is active. We've got meetings set up either this week, next week, or in the near future for continuing meetings. They're all public meetings. So for those of you out there in the public, we established these really 6 subcommittees several years ago with the idea of addressing various aspects of the previous strategic plan. We've kind of, as Veronica said, we've kind of dovetailed the current strategic plan stuff into the 5 areas that we had before. Most of them fit in one place or another. It's not a perfect match totally. But each of these subcommittees deals with some aspect of the strategic plan. The teaching and learning and school culture and community relations have an enormous, they have an enormous charge. It's really the guts of what we do. And more power to you. Okay, I would, at this point, entertain a motion to move into executive session, and somebody could read the, or if they don't have it in front of them.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn to executive session for the purposes of Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining without intent to return to our regular session.
Yeah, this is with respect to collective bargaining for Unit A. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, this needs a roll call vote. Warren Cass,
Aye.
Robert Munch,
Aye.
Christine Morrow,
Aye.
Megan Kirby,
Aye.
Veronica Fenn,
Aye.
David Rimler,
Dave Rumler, aye.
Robert Vaughn, aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.